Okay, where we left off, I'm just showing you how to fix little mistakes, especially if the white of your background has some specks in it. But this is just kind of another dramatic example. This is using the patch tool. It's found under the spot healing brush options. You would, within the layer with the exposure, you would draw an area, and then you can click and drag it and fill it with another patch. Now this is a little different than the clone stamp tool. All the spot healing brush tools use an algorithm which tries to combine what was there with what you want to replace it with to make it smoother. So it won't just look like that, it will look like a combination of what was there with what I grabbed. And sometimes that can give you a much more believable retouch job. So I'm going to go before I started erasing all this stuff. But that's exactly how you would fix blemishes in people's skin, or dandruff coming from their hair, or even smudges on their glasses, things like that. All right. So now I use clone stamp selectively, and mostly I used it to fix some of my vignetting issues, very subtle vignetting issues, and also to fix some of these little spots in the background. So now when everything looks good, I'm going to save it as my PSD. Update your latest file. And this should be something you're happy with, something you'd be willing to print. But now we're going to introduce post-processing. And I introduced this really quickly last time. But this is now something we'll do on all of our photos from now on. It's a very good professional practice, and it's very easy with digital editing. And to do that, the first thing we do is we flatten our image. Not just merge visible holding down Option, but actually flatten it all into one flat image, discarding all our hidden layers. And the big mistake we don't want to make is then saving this as our PSD, overwriting all of our file with all our layers, because that's the file we would go into to make little changes. Instead, this is just our post-processing file, so we're going to save it as something else. And it can be the exact same name, but it will be a different format. And it's a TIFF format, TIFF. The postscript will be TIF. TIFF is an archive format. It saves space, and it can be opened by other programs other than Photoshop, though it cannot be uploaded onto the internet. So we call this an archive format because it saves space. It compresses itself to save memory. And it does that best of all when you use LZW compression, which is a lossless compression. But it doesn't ever lose any data like JPEG does or PNG does. So we always save our TIFFs with that LZW compression. And now we use this as our post-processed image. Now what we could do is we could go on top of it, and we could just do overall adjustments, pushing and pulling its different choices. We could try making it monochrome by duplicating it and going to saturation and taking the saturation all the way down, and then duplicating that, and then going to saturation and colorizing like we've done in the past, and making it sepia tone or something else. And then we could blend those in with our original and get to a final result that we like more than the original. Right? Like when I showed the actions a little while before, I combined a bunch of them to get this. But let me kind of go a little bit slower so you can see what I'm actually doing. So instead of doing everything by hand, I'm going to automate as much as I can within Photoshop using what are called actions. So you go to Window and you click on Actions to show them. And these are like VHS tapes on a shelf. And like VHS tapes, once you pick your shelf, and I want you to find Carl's customized effects here. These are the actions I've prepared for you. You'll see the VHS tapes on that shelf, and you simply have to pick one. So let me say sepia photo effect, right? And then press play. You do not want to open up the VHS tape and start messing around in here, or that messes with the programming. But all these are just a series of commands that you can have Photoshop play automatically. So if I play my sepia photo effect, what it will do, because this is my action and I set them up this way, it will open up a new file named after the name of the action. And it will make the changes to your original in that file. So here's a very quick sepia. And so I'll use that action if I'm wondering, well, what would this look like in sepia? Oh, it looks like that. Do I like that? Do I like it better than this? Do I think it has something to offer this? And what I might do then is flatten this image. So I would go to Layer, Flatten, select it all, Command A, copy it, Command C, go over to my original, and paste it on top, Command V. Because TIFF can support these layers. And then I can choose, do I want this, do I want this, or do I want some combination by blending it in? Maybe I only like 26% of it. But it kind of warms it up in general. Okay. Now you can do it individually with actions. One of my favorites is the high pass action, which I showed you back on the portrait. But before you run the actions, you want to close other Photoshop files you have open. So I have my old TIFF here. I actually want to close that for now. And I'll get rid of that sepia layer. So you just have one flattened image that's a background layer that you can now run your actions on. And so if I do max texture, I just play that, it will open it up as a new file, and it will run this. And then I can select all of that. That brings a lot of the textures out. Copy it, paste it on top, and then blend it into my original. So this is post-processing. I especially like what that does for these details down here. Sharpens them up in a way I really like. Okay. But that's all just doing one at a time. So the one that we will use the most is this one, full run-up F9 to view. And you don't have any other Photoshop files open. It's the flattened, it's already saved as a TIFF. It's a background layer. We click on that tape and we play it. And this is the compilation VHS, which does all of my kind of most often used actions, some of which are my own and some of which are just given freely on the internet that you can use, that I've also included in our actions. And why it's called, that's why it's called full run-up, is it's the whole array of ones that I find really useful. It isn't some of the more specialized ones that I do for fine art purposes, but it's the whole array. And then it's F9 to view, because if I go to Window, Arrange, Flow All in Windows, it will open them all up for me, all named after their different action. And then if I hit F9 to view, it will show me my original, and then all of these different variations. Just to give me an idea. Oh, it's amazing how far that color can be pushed. Maybe there's something in that I like. And if I like that, I'm going to minimize it and save it for later. But this, no, I don't like that, so I'm going to turn that off. This, no, too boring, I'm going to turn it off. This, that looks kind of like an Instagram photo. It's interesting, but it's not what I'm looking for this one. Turn it off. This one, no, too dark. Now, a lot of these, like this black-white sepia one that we've played with a little bit before, or I've shown you before, has all kinds of filters that we could adjust. Gives you all kinds of adjustments within the tool that are interesting. And if you want to play with the adjustments on the actions, you can certainly do that. But ultimately, if you want to be able to use it, just minimize it, we'll flatten it, and we'll bring it over. This one, no, not so much. Heightened drama. Wow, that is exaggerated, right? It really pushes the contrast to the extremes, and it really pushes the edges to the extremes. But the problem is that will also really exaggerate any flaws that your image has. But yeah, maybe I can make use of that. The max texture, well, the heightened drama is already combines max texture with a contrast fill, so maybe I don't need this one. Cross-processing is when you take positive film and you process it for negative color. And you can do it the other way too, which is taking negative film and processing it for positive color. And I like this one more than I like the other one. Now there might only be one of these that you like, or that you think has something to offer. It really depends on what you're shooting and what effect you're going for. The Polaroid effect, it really kind of cools into the shadows and warms into the midtones and highlights. So it really kind of rounds it out. But the problem is it does it with my background as well. And I could play with the different filters and adjustment layers. But if I think there's something of value in it, anything of value in it, I'm just going to minimize it. And then I'm back to my original. Okay, now that I'm at my original, I'm going to open up those ones that I minimized. Hit F9. See if there are any that repeat themselves, right? So this cross-processing effect is very similar to this Polaroid effect. It's just a little dimmer. So I don't think I need that one. So I close it, don't save it. Hit F9 again. Do all of these contribute something different onto my original? Yes, they do. So now I go to my original and I think, okay, which one am I most interested in? Well, I like how this kind of mutes everything. It makes the background less important. So I'm going to flatten this. And remember, I only got here by turning off some of the settings on it. So sometimes your actions, you just have to work with them a little bit, and you'll get more familiar with that. But now I'm going to say layer flatten, so I can bring this whole image over, discard any hidden layers, select it all by going to select all or Command A, edit copy or Command C, and you can close it right then, but just so you can see what it's doing. Then I go to my original, the one with my name, and I say edit paste or Command V, and it will paste it right on top, an exact copy. And then I can close this and not save it because I keep everything in my TIFF. And then I decide, okay, is this my new project? Do I like it as is? And I do like this quite a bit. It's nice and subtle. But I can also use opacity and blend it into my original. So maybe I'll put it right there, about 85%, because I like it quite a bit. Right now, I want some of this color. So I'm going to flatten this, layer, flatten. Select it all, Command A, copy it, Command C, close it, go to my original, and paste it, Command V. And then I can blend this in using opacity, just to get a little bit of that color. And I can even play with the order of them. And I can even play with the overlays. Like soft light is a nice one for integrating color, but not affecting your background.